In our headlines on this Tuesday, April 28th, here in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung pledges to promote partnership with the Global South as part of efforts to ease over-dependence on specific regions and to broaden options to ensure national interests. Meanwhile, the U.S. and Iran clash over the Strait of Hormuz during a UN Security Council session on maritime security on Monday, with the U.S. calling for a multilateral coalition to restore freedom of navigation. And the 31-year-old man who opened fire at the Washington Hilton at the start of an annual dinner for White House correspondents attended by U.S. President Donald Trump has been charged with attempted assassination of the American president. We start here on the national front, where President Lee Jae-myung has highlighted the importance of diversifying South Korea's diplomatic portfolio following his recent state visits to India and Vietnam. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports.
President Lee Jae-myung has stressed the need to broaden South Korea's diplomatic outreach to the global south following his recent trip to India and Vietnam.
변화의 물결 속에서 안정적 성장 동력을 확보하려면 특정 지역에 대한 지나친 의존도를 낮추고 우리의 선택지를 꾸준히 늘려가는 전략적이고 유연한 국익 실용 외교가 절실합니다.
Chairing his first cabinet meeting since the trip on Tuesday, President Lee said the war in the Middle East is reshaping the global economic and security landscape and called for a more strategic and flexible diplomatic approach. Tuesday's meeting reviewed the outcomes of Lee's state visits with a particular focus on strengthening economic ties with India.
어쨌든 미국, 유럽, 중국에 편중돼 있는 게 현실인데 인도는 지금 세계에서 제일 인구도 많고 14억 6천인가 7천만이라고. 근데 이게 이제 기업들이 독자적으로 진출하기에 초기에는 부담이 사실은 있는데 이 정부 간 협력이 되게 크게 도움되잖아요.
Lee's summit with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi resulted in an agreement to establish a ministerial-level Korea-India Industrial Cooperation Committee, along with an MOU to support cooperation between the two countries' small and medium-sized enterprises.
In the case of our ministry, one deputy director covers 5 to 6 countries, including India, despite India's importance. Our current institutional capacity remains limited. We need to strengthen our governance framework to reflect India's strategic significance.
At the same time, President Lee underscored the importance of maintaining stable ties with traditional partners. He urged resolving pending issues based on mutual respect and shared principles while building forward-looking relationships. The president didn't mention specific countries, but the remarks come after the U.S. reportedly restricted intelligence sharing with Seoul on North Korea following the unification minister's disclosure of the regime's nuclear facility in Kusong. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
The National Assembly's April session has come to a close after a rare bipartisan push for economic relief, and attention now is on a high-stakes constitutional vote in May and the local elections in June. Our political correspondent Moon Hae-ryan reports.
The National Assembly's extraordinary session for April ended on Tuesday after a rare burst of bipartisan lawmaking despite weeks of intense political confrontation. Lawmakers approved a 26.2 trillion won supplementary budget aimed at easing the pressure on people from inflation and high energy prices linked to the conflict in the Middle East. The package includes direct relief payments for lower-income households, with the first round of applications and payouts already underway, alongside fuel cost support, transport discounts and supply chain assistance. With the April session now over, attention is rapidly shifting to a major constitutional reform vote in May. National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik is urging the Conservative People Power Party to allow its lawmakers a free vote on the proposal. If passed, it would mark South Korea's first constitutional amendment since 1987. The proposed changes would formally recognize the democratic legacy of the May 18th Gwangju democratization movement, strengthen parliamentary control over martial law declarations, and add the state's responsibility for balanced regional development. To pass, the bill needs support from at least 197 of the Assembly's 295 lawmakers. Reform supporters currently have 187 signatories, meaning they need opposition backing. The People Power Party has opposed the move, citing concerns over possible future debate on presidential term limits. Supporters say the current constitution already blocks any extension of a sitting president's term. The political focus is also shifting to the June 3rd local elections, now just weeks away. The DP hopes to build on recent policy momentum, while the PPP faces internal divisions over leadership and campaign strategy. Several races in cities such as Busan and Daegu are expected to test whether long-standing regional voting patterns are beginning to shift. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, a reshuffling in the ranking of equity markets worldwide is reportedly underway as AI demand elevates South Korea's standing past a major European counterpart. Our economics correspondent Kim Jun-hong reports.
Korea has overtaken the UK to rank as the world's 8th largest stock market, driven by a strong rally in AI-related tech heavyweights. Bloomberg reported Tuesday that the total market capitalization of Korean-listed firms has jumped more than 45% this year to around $4.04 trillion. This far outpaces the UK, which has seen only a roughly 3% rise to $3.99 trillion. Until the end of 2024, the UK market was about twice as large as Korea's, but sharp gains this year have quickly reversed that. Bloomberg attributed the surge to strong gains in AI-driven chip stocks. The report highlighted industry leaders Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, noting that the two memory chip giants now account for more than 40% of the benchmark Kospi.
Korea's stock market has long traded below what its economic size would suggest, but the recent rally has brought it closer to fair value. Gains are being supported by a resilient AI-driven semiconductor cycle.
Another expert says policy efforts to ease the so-called Korea discount are also helping drive the rally.
Since March, a push for share buybacks and stronger shareholder returns has helped stabilize the market. Combined with rapid earnings growth, the Kospi has shown a clear outperformance against global peers.
Meanwhile, the Kospi continued its upward rally Tuesday, finishing at 6,641.02, up 0.39% from the previous close. At one point in the session, the index rose to 6,712.73, topping the previous intraday high in the 6,600 range set just a day earlier, and moving above the 6,700 mark for the first time. The rally moved in line with gains on Wall Street. Overnight, major U.S. indexes closed at record highs, lifted by optimism of strong big tech earnings, despite ongoing uncertainty over ceasefire talks between Washington and Tehran. Kim Jun-hong, Arirang News.
The Bank of Korea's net profit hit an all-time high in the first quarter of this year. The cumulative net profit stood over 4.2 trillion won, or some $2.9 billion, up 3 times the amount from the first quarter of last year. The gains were garnered amid a persistently high exchange rate that averaged over 1,461 to the dollar throughout the first quarter, boosting returns on the bank's foreign currency securities and overseas asset management. The record earnings are expected to benefit government revenues as the central bank is required by law to transfer a significant portion of its annual profit to the national treasury. U.S. and Iranian ambassadors to the UN locked horns over the Strait of Hormuz during a session on maritime security on Monday, while Iran's top diplomat was in Moscow for talks with Russia's Vladimir Putin. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations is calling for a multinational coalition to restore safe navigation in the Strait of Hormuz, accusing Iran of unlawfully disrupting one of the world's most vital shipping routes. Addressing a UN Security Council session on maritime security, Mike Waltz stressed that global waterways must remain open and cannot be controlled by any single nation, warning that Tehran is using the strait as a geopolitical leverage with far-reaching consequences. In response, Iran's ambassador to the United Nations, Amir Saeed Iravani, asserted Iran's sovereignty, particularly in the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz. He emphasized that Iran is not bound by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, except for provisions recognized as customary international law.
Iran is not a party to the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Accordingly, it is not bound by its treaty-based provisions except to the extent that specific rules reflected therein are universally recognized as customary international law.
At the same time, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi suggested a shift in tone, saying Tehran is considering negotiations. He argued that despite the United States' global power, Washington failed to achieve its objectives in the conflict, prompting renewed calls for dialogue. Araghchi made the remarks during a visit to St. Petersburg for talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin said he hoped Iran would overcome what he called a difficult period and that peace should ultimately prevail.
Of course, we very much hope that based on this courage and will for independence, the Iranian people will, under the leadership of a new leader, make it through this difficult period of trials and that peace will follow.
Russia has positioned itself as a potential mediator in the crisis, following U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran that Moscow has strongly condemned. It has also proposed storing Iran's enriched uranium as a way to ease tensions, though Washington has not accepted the offer. The growing alignment between Moscow and Tehran comes amid deepening strategic ties. The two countries signed a 20-year partnership agreement last year, and Russia is currently constructing additional nuclear reactors at Iran's Bushehr facility, the country's only nuclear power plant. Araghchi reaffirmed that cooperation between the two nations will continue to expand, and thanked Moscow for its ongoing support. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And the man who reportedly opened fire at the venue of an annual dinner for White House correspondents attended by U.S. President Donald Trump has been charged with attempted assassination of the American president. Our Kim Do-yeon has more.
The suspect in the shooting at the White House Correspondents Association dinner has been charged with the attempted assassination of U.S. President Donald Trump and could face life in prison. On Monday local time, the U.S. Department of Justice formally indicted Cole Thomas Allen.
Today, the Department of Justice filed 3 federal charges in United States District Court against Cole Thomas Allen. The first count is attempted assassination of the President of the United States. This count is punishable by up to life in prison.
Allen faces 2 additional charges: the interstate transportation of a firearm to commit a felony and the discharge of a firearm during a crime of violence in what U.S. prosecutors called a premeditated attack. Officials confirmed Allen traveled across state lines from California and positioned himself just 1 floor above the ballroom where the president was attending the event. He was apprehended carrying a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun, a .38 caliber semi-automatic handgun, and at least 3 knives. The White House swiftly condemned the attack, pointing to a newly discovered manifesto written by the suspect that detailed a clear intent to inflict massive harm on the president and other administration officials.
This political violence stems from a systemic demonization of him and his supporters by commentators, yes, by elected members of the Democrat Party and even some in the media.
The shooting triggered a security emergency in Washington, with the breach coming as the United States prepares to host a series of major public events and large-scale gatherings to celebrate the 250th anniversary of its founding. To address vulnerabilities, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles is convening an urgent meeting early this week with top leadership from the Department of Homeland Security and the Secret Service to completely overhaul protection protocols for the upcoming national celebrations. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
A proposed U.S. missile defense system looks to move from plan to action as the Pentagon reaffirms the potential threats from countries like North Korea. And speaking of the northern regime, South Korea's top nuclear envoy has also sounded a similar alarm. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung has details.
Mark Berkowitz, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of War for Space Policy, has said the Golden Dome, a next-generation air and missile defense system, is necessary to protect the U.S. homeland from military threats posed by North Korea, China, and Russia. This came from written testimony submitted ahead of a Senate Armed Services Committee subcommittee hearing on Monday local time. While highlighting that Washington's competitors are expanding, diversifying, and increasing the sophistication of their missile and air capabilities, Berkowitz said that building a comprehensive next-generation air and missile defense system is essential to strengthening deterrence and defending the home country. He specifically named China, North Korea, and Russia, saying these countries are expanding their nuclear and missile forces. Especially regarding North Korea, he pointed out how the regime continues to enhance its nuclear, missile, and air weapons capabilities, posing a direct and growing threat to the U.S. He added that North Korea's full range of missiles threatens American, South Korean, and Japanese territory, while its ICBMs are capable of striking the U.S. mainland. Meanwhile, South Korea's top nuclear envoy underlined the need to resolve the North Korean nuclear issue, calling it the most urgent challenge to the non-proliferation regime. During his keynote speech at the 11th Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Conference held in New York on Monday local time, Dongmyo, Vice Foreign Minister for Diplomatic Strategy and Intelligence, said that Pyongyang was the only case of a country that benefited from the NPT regime, but which then declared a withdrawal and continues to openly develop nuclear weapons. He added that it remains the most pressing challenge to the non-proliferation regime. He also urged Russia to stop its illegal military cooperation with the North. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
In other news now, BTS has earned platinum certification from France's National Syndicate of Phonographic Publishing for its latest album, Arirang. The group's agency says the certification is awarded to albums that surpass the equivalent of 100,000 sales, including physical album sales and streaming. This marks BTS's fourth platinum-certified group album, with the latest milestone achieved about a month after its release. Its previous albums were acknowledged after about a year. And old is gold, and a flea market here in Seoul is serving to prove the popularity of these words of wisdom among the old and the young. Given the question, why buy new when old will do? Our Chung Hye-rim was there.
Entering Dongmyo Flea Market in central Seoul, the atmosphere stands out. Vendors sell a wide range of goods, from vintage watches to used electronics, but the biggest draw is piles of second-hand clothing. Shoppers dig through them for shirts, trousers, and jackets, usually priced between 2,000 and 5,000 won, about $2 per item. This place was once considered an affordable clothing market for older generations, but the demographic has noticeably shifted in recent years.
I came here to relax after my school exams. I like the old vintage and retro vibe, and I'm hoping to buy a designer jacket today.
I heard Dongmyo is famous for its vintage items, so I came looking for some bracelets and rings.
For young people, Dongmyo has become more than just a place to shop. Spurred by social media posts and visits from K-pop stars, the area has evolved into a cultural landmark for experience consumption, the act of digging for your own personal finds.
My friends recommend this place. It's very cool. We buy a suitcase, a clothes, and a cap.
But the hunting for ground-level bargains isn't the only reason people come here.
Dongmyo not only has a variety of clothing, but is also famous for pieces that are timeless, such as limited edition brand clothes. And many shoppers come here to add these to their fashion collection.
This expanding multi-generational customer base is bringing a fresh wave of economic vitality to the local merchants.
We see teenagers as young as 15 to people in their early 20s as customers these days. But there are still many older folks, so people of all ages really come here. Sales were solid, but have increased since the weather has become warmer.
With its unique blend of history and modern fashion trends, Dongmyo continues to solidify its position as the center of South Korea's growing vintage market. Chung Hye-rim, Arirang News.
This is the world now. bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. Britain's King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived in Washington on Monday for a 4-day state visit, the first by a British monarch to the United States in 20 years. President Trump received the royal couple at the White House on Monday afternoon. The schedule includes a congressional address on Tuesday, a state dinner, and a visit to New York to honor the victims of the September 11th attacks. The visit comes as U.S.-UK relations are strained over disagreements on the Iran war, with Trump criticizing Britain for its lack of support for the U.S.-Israeli offensive. President Trump on Monday called for ABC to fire the late-night host Jimmy Kimmel after Kimmel made a joke about Melania ahead of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. In a parody segment last Thursday about the upcoming dinner, Kimmel said Melania, quote, had a glow like an expectant widow. A shooting at the dinner on Saturday led to a Secret Service agent being wounded. Melania on Monday called Kimmel's remarks, quote, corrosive, and urged ABC to take action. Trump called the joke far beyond acceptable and demanded Kimmel's immediate removal. ABC and Disney have not responded to requests for comment. Nearly 2,000 years after Mount Vesuvius buried the ancient Roman city of Pompeii, artificial intelligence is now rebuilding the face of one of its victims. Pompeii Archaeological Park released an image on Monday showing what a man found near one of the city's gates may have looked like in his final moments, crouching for cover as the volcano erupted. His remains were found alongside a terracotta bowl believed to have been his only shield against the falling debris. He was also carrying a lamp and 10 bronze coins, suggesting he was trying to flee when the eruption overtook him. Chu Ji-han, Arirang News.
Most of the rain has now tapered off, but we're still seeing a few showers across central regions. From this afternoon into the evening, Gangwon-do Province could see around 5 millimeters of rain. With the recent rain, some of the dry weather alerts have been lifted, but they're still in place for parts of Chungcheong-do, northern Jeollabuk-do, and Gyeongsang-buk-do regions. So do stay cautious about fire risks. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 8 degrees Celsius, Chuncheon at 6 degrees, Busan at 12 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 20 degrees, Daejeon at 20 degrees as well, Jeju at 16 degrees. Starting tomorrow, we'll be back to clear skies, with daytime highs climbing above 20 degrees. And that'll bring back noticeable day-to-night temperature swings. So now here's a look at the weather around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, and today we touch upon the unrest in the Middle East. Do stay with us, and thank you for now.